Hello and welcome to Requested Nodes, a series focused on the community questions about the visual scripting tool. Hey everybody, we're back again and we're taking a look at another request on how to use a specific node. This is again asked by Hester74. Hester74 was wondering how to properly utilize the Get Online Players list. So again, I have a testing visual script that I have set up here. If you don't have one, go ahead and make your own. So if we look in our function list here, and we go to functions and sandbox.game, you can go down and there should be a player listing, and right here, second one down, is a Get Online Players. Now, when you place this, as you can see here, it's just got one connection node and it puts out a list of longs. So now normally if you were to connect to this, you do the standard connection where you place another you'd place like another node to connect to it. But in this case, Hester specifically wants to know, he wants to be able to make it where when a player joins, they get assigned to a faction and they can't leave that faction, and pretty much just auto faction assignment a little bit. So actually, I'm going to show you something. This really isn't well known and it's not really well explained, but if you click on here, or if you hover your mouse, you'll see it turns orange, and if you click and drag, you'll notice we'll get an arrow coming out. Now this is normally how you would connect to another node, but if you don't have a node, just like float it out here and let go, and it'll actually pop up with a separate function list that you see over here on the right. And I accidentally just clicked in the search functions, which I didn't want to do, but it still brings it up. If you notice here, you can see there's an @ right? So if we click that, double click that, it'll pop up here, and I'm gonna do this one more time. And as you can see here, the list is back. Where did it go? Oh, sorry. And then you have a count. So we're going to use that. So pretty much what these two nodes do, I'm going to start with count because count's simpler. Count tells you there is this many people online when used with the Get Online's player list. In any other list, it just tells you the amount of items in that list in an integer format. So you can use that for doing math and whatnot. Specifically, what I used it for is in my TDM script is I used it to determine the max amount of people a single team could have. Based on, I would say, okay, you know, there's 8 people online. That means max is each team can have 4. And I will lock out the team from being joined. And now we go over to the @ node. So the @ node, you can tell it, I want to get the value that's in position 12, or position 3. So let's just say 3 here. And as you can see here, there is an integer input, so you could have it go through a cycle or a loop or something like that and just have it return everything for that. Now, for making it where the player gets assigned to a faction and has to stay in the faction is going to get interesting, because I think you're going to have to do something a lot more complex than just saying, oh, this player at this position is in red team and player in this position is in blue team. Because what happens is as people leave and join, that list gets redone each time, and there's not a guarantee that the person will stay in the same slot. So really, you would probably have to do it based on, I'm actually trying to think this now. I wasn't thinking of it too much, but again, you're not going to just be able to use Get Online Players list. You're going to have to use it in conjunction with a decently decently complex chunk of scripting here. So actually, I'm going to see if I can't figure it out right now. So you're probably going to want to do it on player join. Do we have that? Keep in mind, I haven't really actually touched this. I've been looking into it, but I have not touched this scripting in over a year and a half. Mainly because I was irked that they weren't doing anything with it. Sorry. Oh, also, so the other thing I do want to point out here really quickly is, you're either going to have factions set up in your world, or you're going to have to make use of the create a faction block. So obviously here you have a string faction tag, faction name, description, private text, all that stuff. And then you can do, you'd have to, if you're doing a red versus blue, you're obviously going to have to set them to be enemies. And then the other thing is you can do a set players faction. You got to be careful because with setting players faction, I believe you have to kick the player from a previous faction first. Before you can set them into a new one. There's actually a lot here having to do with the factions. Pretty much, they're very self-explanatory. The R faction's enemies just tells you if they are enemies or not. That doesn't actually allow you to set it, from what I can tell. But anyways, so I am trying to remember because they have actually slightly... Is it events? Oh yeah, sorry. It's I apologize, it's been a while. So you have a player connected and a player disconnected in events. So pretty much what you could do, I would say what you would do is you have player connected. And I think what you're going to want to do here is you're going to actually want to utilize memory, like stored, shared storage. Which I haven't done a lot with. I'm actually wondering how I would do that. Pool float, integer, store long, store string, store vector. Okay. Anyway, so what I would probably do is I'd have it when the player is connected. Each time it does this, I would pull the count, and we're gonna do a little arithmetic. So pretty much we're gonna divide the count by 2 since we know we have 2 teams. I'm just gonna get a constant because we know what this is gonna be. So I'm gonna. For now, I'm going to disconnect the @ because I don't want it to accidentally call. So yeah, so what we're going to do is when a player joins is we're going to figure out, hey, how many online players are there right now? And when this comes out, what we're actually going to do is we're going to have it round, and we're going to want to have it round up, obviously. And I cannot remember, actually, if you can just push that into an integer and it will automatically round. I believe it will. But we're going to make a variable, and we're going to call it max team players. I did not mean to do plus. I meant to do underscore. So we're gonna have max team players, and by default, it's always we're gonna have it by default be 1. We don't want it to be 0. Technically, by default, if it's ever running on a server, it's always gonna be at least 1 because there's always gonna be at least 1. Or if it's running on a local instance, it's always gonna be 1. But if you're running this on a server, you're gonna have the possibility of it hitting 0, and you don't want to have any divide by 0 or anything like that in your script, just because of standard. You don't divide by 0 in math. So we're going to initialize it so it'll always be 1. Anyways, so what we'll do here is we'll get a setter here, which pretty much you can just, as you can see here, is you can set what the value is going to be. And so pretty much when the player connects is we're going to set the max team players to be, yeah, we're going to set the max team players to be whatever it is for either team. And then what we're going to do is we're going to hold on a bit. So we have the integer 64 player ID. Is we're going to do a set players faction, but what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to look at how many people are on each team and determine which team they should go into. Because you're going to have to worry about people disconnecting. Obviously, because crashing and somebody might have to leave, get food or something like that. So there's, like I said, this is gonna get really complex with how you're gonna have to handle this. I'm doing my best to kind of do like a really quick, but at the same time I'm having to actively think about how I would do this. I don't believe there's any easy way to prevent people from actually leaving a faction. Faction-wise, there's nothing really here to, there's nothing here to guarantee the person stays in the faction. The only other thing that you could do that I can think of is you can store a variable name that is that person's integer 64, and if that player tries to leave a faction, which I don't believe you could do. Can you check if somebody leaves a faction? I don't believe you can. So what you would probably have to do is with shared storage is say store integer, and you have your string key. Now the thing is, oh, okay, yes, it will let you do this. So what I would do is you would store the integer. Once you figure this out, you would store the integer, and then obviously once you figure out a team value, either being like 1. So the way we're gonna do this is 1 is red. And actually, no. You know what? We're going to do this where it's actually easily readable for somebody who's looking at this. So we're going to store a string. So obviously the string value, or the string key here, is going to be the player's integer 64 ID. Which I need to change that long? Is it long? I believe it's long. You want to get in the habit of doing like the long to strings if you're doing something to strings. I mean, the game or the engine can figure it out by itself, but it's just a good habit to converting your variables so that they match. What do I think? I believe your 64 ID is long technically. Yeah, because there's no other. Anyways, sorry. So like I said, and then we're just gonna have 2 constants over here that are string type, and it's literally going to be red and then BLU for the 2 faction tags. Whoops. And BLU. And the way that we're going to do this is we're going to do it this way. So when the player connects, we're first going to pull how many people are online in the count of a number. We're going to divide it by 2, and we're going to set our variable max team players to show the value of the maximum amount of people that's allowed on each team. And the way that this is done, since we're putting it into an integer, is it should round up if it's 0.5. Pretty much, if it's any odd number, it's going to round up. So if you have 3 people on it, it's going to allow 2 people per team. That way, somebody the third person can actually go onto a team. Then what we're going to do is in the factions list, you can get faction members, which if you notice here is another list. So what we're going to do here is we're going to call this, and again, we're going to call the count, which I'm just going to Control-C this. So we're going to pull the count. And we're going to have to do this twice, actually. So I'm going to create this twice, and the things are going to go all over the place like it always does. So the first one's going to be for red. And the second one's going to be for blue. And I want you guys to keep this in mind. You need to have these factions created before any of this is called. The easy way to do this is just to create them in the world. If not, you can utilize where is it here? You can utilize the game started method. What that'll do is, as the game launches up, you can tell it, as you can see here, it's starting the state machine, but what you can do is you can tell it to create a faction, and you just create 2 of these, one being obviously red, red team, Death to the blue team. Stuff like that. So pretty much you would just do this twice. And throw it on... Let me just do this quickly here. And you would throw it on game started method. And change this. We don't want to say death to the blue team. We want to say death to the red team. So you could just stick... you could just connect the... If I can click it. Connect these two together. Whoops. Grab them and... throw them down on the game started method. Like I said, all it does is when the game starts or when the map loads and everything, or game loads, it'll execute this method, and you can use that to set stuff up. But anyways, so we did that just in case you don't have them on your map. If you already have it on your map, I don't believe it'll overwrite. I have not checked. Again, they've changed some stuff. I'm still fiddling around with all of the stuff they've changed. But anyways, back to what we were doing. So again, once we've done that, we're gonna have 2 more variables here that we're gonna make, and one's gonna be red count, which is pretty much how many people are on red. If it's gonna let me, I'm gonna do a P count just so you know, and we're gonna do a blue P count. And pretty much we're going to use these to keep track of, how many people are in each faction. And it's going to be part of when somebody comes in, whose team are they assigned to. So we can leave these in ints because we're not ever going to be, setting this. Anyways, so again, once, we're going to get 2 more setters. Whoops. We're going to get 2 more setters, and once that comes in is we're going to set it to, that's red, and this will be blue. And keep in mind, when the setter comes up, it has a default thing it'll push to, which is your first variable that you made in the session. So for this, we gotta set it to red, and for this one, we gotta tell it to blue. And we're just gonna have it set this as a person comes up. And after here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna do some arithmetic again. Sorry, I'm just reorganizing this so it's kind of close together and easy to read to an extent. So we're just going to move these up and out of the way, and we're going to have the store string over here until we actually use it. So yeah, so pretty much what this is doing is as a player joins, it takes the online player count, divides it by 2, and sets that to be the max team players that are allowed per team. With faction members are getting counted for both our red team and our blue team. And now what we're going to do is we're going to do a quick arithmetic, and we're going to do a branch. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to check, and we're going to need 2 getters here. So getters literally just fetch the value of the specified variable. So in this case, we're going to want red team, and we're going to want blue team's count. And we're going to check, okay, is one greater than the other. So we're going to say, is red count greater than blue count? And we're going to drag this over the branch here, and we're going to run the result of this through the branch. And we're going to say, okay, if red count is higher than blue count, then we're going to set that person that just joined into the blue team. So here we're going to take this node, the set players faction. So we're going to say if this is true, if red team has more people than blue team, we're going to take that person and we're going to send them to the blue team. And so we're going to have to reach back here and grab your integer 64 ID off the person and put it to here. And really quickly, you just need to use the string faction tag, which in this case we know is blue. If you want, obviously you can, there is a ability to connect to here. If you have custom names or you want to be able to actively switch the faction tags, which I wouldn't recommend doing that in the game. I'd do that on startup again. Anyways, so in this case, so we're saying, okay, so if red count is higher than blue count, we're going to set them to blue. Now we're actually going to do another branch here. And you might ask, well, you know, if red count's not higher than blue count, then obviously they go to red. Well, here's the problem. If you somehow have it where for whatever reason this instance calls and for whatever reason there's even numbers on both teams somehow when this calls, you're going to have to handle that. So actually, that would actually be quite common. I don't know why I say that's right. That's quite common because let's put it this way. You know, I have 2 people and 2 people. So literally, you're going to have to worry about having somebody come in when it's even teams. And you're going to have to decide, okay, you know, whose team do I go to? You know, whose team do I send this person to? So again, we're going to pull the arithmetic and this is going to get a little bit messy. Just saying. Actually, I can probably make this a little bit cleaner. So I'm going to move this in here, because I'm pretty sure this is going to get moved anyways. So again, we're going to do arithmetic, and we're going to do another is greater than check. And we're going to say, okay, now this time is blue count bigger than our red count? And we're going to put that into a comparator. And if this is true, we're going to set the player's faction to red. And again, we got to reach back here and pull the integer 64 player ID, which is a log. They need to change that, Keen. And we're going to say, okay, he goes red team. Alright, so let's do this. Unfortunately, as you can see here, we're starting to get a little bit messy with some of the overlaps, but I'm doing my best here to make sure it's nice and clean. We're going to handle a player disconnected event to do with this also, just in case. But anyways, so pretty much right now what this script will do is as somebody connects, it takes a look at, okay, what's the maximum number of people that we're allowed to have on a team? What's the count of people on the red team? And what's the count of people on blue team? And then it compares those to see if the count is higher on red team than blue team, it'll send them to blue team. And if the count is higher on blue team than red team, it'll send them to the red team. Now we have to handle, okay, what happens if I join and it's an even? There's, you know, it's 2v2, there's an even amount. So there's going to be a couple ways to do this. Now, depending on how super complex you want to get it, you could have it where it would check how much time is left versus the team score, and then assign the person maybe to the losing team to give them an advantage, which that might irk some people. Or we might be able to get away with doing a random number, which actually I don't remember if they have that. Okay, so we'll do a random int here. So we'll set the max to be... We can set the minimum to be 1 and the maximum to be 2. And literally this will just put out a 1 or 2, and if it's a 1, you go to red team, and if it's a 2, you go to blue team. Actually, easier way to do this would be a 0 and a 1, because you can technically put that into a comparator. So we'll do another branch here, and this will be the last branch for this. Will it let me? It won't. Okay. All right, so we'll have to do an arithmetic here. So we'll do an arithmetic, and we'll check. Okay, is it equal to? So we'll do the integer return here, and we'll just say constant of 1. And we'll take that and we'll throw that up into here. Also, I'm going to just move this entire section here just so we can see what I'm doing and not have clutter underneath us. Anyways, sorry. Move this here. I like to keep myself mildly organized, and for somebody who maybe has to come in later and look at your coding and your scripting, it'll help because they'll actually be able to see what the hell's going on. Anyways, so pretty much we're saying, okay, you know, give me a random int, and if that integer is equal to 1, we'll just say, let's go to red team. And if it's not equal to 1 and it's equal to 2, we'll go blue team. Just really quick and easy, not super complicated. I'm not doing any calculations. It's just, give me a random number, and if it's this, do here, and if it's this, go here. There is a round. So we're going to utilize this round because, right, where is it? The count here. Like I said, you're going to want to get in the habit of actively making sure your values match. So we're going to tell this to round. And yeah, so Okay, so what this will do right here is this will make sure that your player gets assigned into a faction when they join, based on how many people are allowed on the team per faction, and um, which faction has more people. And I just realized here you're gonna want to do a careful check with the red count, blue count. Also, the other thing I should check is you could add another branch in here if you really want to that checks to make sure red count is equal to blue count. We're assuming, which is kind of a bad thing, that if red count is not higher than blue count and blue count is not higher than red count, then they're the same. We're assuming that. And technically that is the three options that is there, but you should always have a failsafe just in case somehow some other weird juxtaposition where they're the same but greater and not greater than each other happens. It can get itself out of it. But like I said, nothing too complicated. Let me just spread this out. I try to keep my stuff as compact and in as one spot in relation to each other as possible. Right. Okay, so this is for that. So now, the other thing is we have to do a store string. So we're gonna drag this out over here, and this is where we start getting a little bit messy with our connection lines, and unfortunately, there's not a way around this. So we're gonna need this. Whoops. Helps if I press the right buttons here. We're gonna need this every time that we set the player's faction. So we're gonna say we're gonna store string. We're gonna have red here, blue here. Again, organization is up to you. So we're gonna store a string, right? And we're gonna set this store strings string key, which is pretty much this is the value it's storing. This is the identifier versus the value, and we're gonna set that value to blue in this case, since we're coming off and he's getting set to blue. And in the case of he's getting set to, or they are getting set to red, because we don't know if it's a guy or a girl, we're going to say, okay, store the string value as red. And I'll just copy paste this, and again, it does that thing where it sends them all over the place. And let me just set this up here again. So what we're doing here is we're pretty much storing into memory, and we're saying, hey, the person with this ID is set to, this faction. And so this is actually really cool, because what you can do is you can set it so that if somebody else comes in and there's already a storage string value with their name on it, you can actually have it push them back into whatever group they were in first. And that would be another check in the front, is I would say after the max team players in here is you'd branch it, and you would say, search your load, you would do a load for load string, and you'd pretty much just put the person's long to string here, and you take a look at whatever is returned. If the string is empty, you can say, okay, it's obvious he's not on a team. Or the other way that I would do it is kind of like here, where I'd say, okay, is the string equal to blue or is the string equal to red? In either case, don't use that. I could have sworn there was a way to do, logic gates. So we have an or, right? So you could pretty much just say for arithmetic. And again, this is going to get a little bit crazy. Well, no, I want that to stay. Sorry. So we're going to load the string, and we're going to put in arithmetic, and we're just going to have, equal to. Copy this. And so this string return is going to be going in the front. And we're going to say, okay, is it equal to red? Or is it equal to blue? And we're going to, and you can use an OR gate. So pretty much an OR gate means if either one of these matches, essentially, that output will be on. So if any of these two outputs are on, this turns true. And then you could turn that to a branch and go here. And so pretty much, you say, okay, if false, you go down and you do this entire string that we just made here, or this entire craziness that we just made. Or if it's true, is then you set the player's faction based on the value, whatever the string value is. So again, if true, where'd that go? So pretty much you just say, okay, if it's true, you take his long player ID, which you gotta reach all the way back here for. Take the long player ID and you set the string faction tag to whatever the string is. And by having it where the string that we're storing with the person's ID is the actual faction tag, saves us a little bit, because we don't have to sit there and create like an extra set of variables here to be able to say, hey, go into this. We can just load that string value from there and it'll match what we're using. And I would recommend doing that for this, just to just to keep things simpler and to avoid having, tons and tons of variables on your script. And we're gonna just put this here just as a it's the easiest cleanest way to do this. Unfortunately, like I said, there is no clean way of doing this. As you can see, this is like the cleanest that I can get this, and you have connection wires going everywhere. But anyways, so I understand this video is going really long, and unfortunately this is going to be really long because it's specifically how to do what's being asked. All right, so pretty much here is we have it, obviously, where somebody joins, we pull the maximum amount of team players we have, we check the red count versus the blue count, and we go and we say, okay, which one's greater, which team to assign them to. This little section up here is if you want to add in a check for somebody who's coming back in, which I will integrate that after I take care of the player disconnect and the check. So I'm going to do the player disconnect later, and we're going to look at the method update here. So when you start, unfortunately, like, this is no longer anywhere close to the way it looks when it starts, but when it starts is you have a method update. Find that. So that is literally happening every tick of the game. And off of this, we can do, let's see. It's not a switch. Sequence? Sequence. So you're going to want a sequence. So just pull a sequence off of this, and what sequence does is, as you pull stuff off of here, it lists it. So what we're going to do here is we're gonna pull off the sequence, and we're gonna have a check pretty much that lists through. It's gonna go through our get online players list. So we're gonna do get online players. Helps if I look in the right spot. So we're gonna do get online players. We're gonna do a list, and we're gonna do. Did I move it? I think I deleted it. So we're just gonna pull this off here, and we're gonna do at. And we're going to do a loop. Obviously the first is going to be 0. And the last is going to be whatever the count... Whoops, I missed that. Whatever the count is of the get online players list. One thing I would say, I'm not doing it here. I probably should. You do not want this rolling on every tick. I would say do it where it happens every 10 ticks. Maybe. So that's every 10th of a second. It'll check. It'll do this check. Anyways, so we'll have this here where this starts here. As you can see with the sequence, it pops out another sequence so we can use it later. So we can say for the body, or sorry, for the counter, put that into integer index. And we're going to get a long return. And it's pretty much that long return is going to give you your online player ID number. So then what we're gonna do is, again, we're gonna make use of this stuff up here. So I'm just gonna copy this, and again, for whatever reason, when you copy paste, oh wow, that one actually stayed as group. I lied. A lot of times when you copy paste, this will like explode out, as you've seen. So anyway, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a load string, and we're gonna use it on here for the long return. And we're going to say, okay, this is our string key, and we want to see what that string returns. Now, and we're actually going to have to, so here's the thing, we're going to have to do a couple checks. So we're doing this, but then we're also going to have to, where is it here? Where is it? We're obviously going to need some branches, but then we're also going to need to pull what the player's faction is. There should be, okay, so here we go. Get player's faction ID tag. So again, so with the long return, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this. And we're going to see, and you pull it off the body here to have this run while this runs, and then when it's finished, you can have it where it just says it's finished. But so you're going to say branch, and we're going to have to do some arithmetic here. So we're going to say, okay, we're going to check to see if it's equal to. And what we're going to do is we're going to say get player's faction tag, and we're going to say, okay, get this, and we're going to put this in the bottom because this is a string, and we're going to put the load string in the top. And what this is going to do is it's going to say, okay, the player at position 12 is ID 647. I know that's not how long they are. And we're going to say, okay, you know, we're going to see what faction he's in. So get player's faction tag. Okay, it says he's in red. And keep in mind, we've loaded memory with that person's ID number as their memory key, and we've put the string of what their faction tag is. So let's say, you know, it says he's on red team, but we've loaded the string, and the load string says, wait on, hold a minute, he's supposed to be in blue team, not red team. So we do a comparative. So we can say if it's true, pretty much just do nothing. We're okay. We don't have to change this person. You know, we don't have to force him to a new faction. But we're going to say, hold on, if it's false, we're going to want to do something here. So you can pretty much say if it's false, we're going to want to, if we go back over to factions here, we're going to want to kick player from faction. And then we're going to set the player's faction. So the nice thing about this is we can use that load string for that guy's number and put that in the string faction tag for this. And to give it a long player ID is just pull from here. And let me just organize this so it's not as ugly. Well, if it's false, we want to have it drop down here. Anyways, so what this will do really quickly is this will execute on every tick, which I would recommend before this. You can do like general scripts, which are the yellow looking script things. If I do, where is it here? So right here like this. I have, you know, like repeat after delay. So this yellow thing. I was like, I put that in here and integer number, so I could set that to 10. And that would wait for 10 ticks to go by, and then it would trigger this, which I would recommend doing that. But actually, on that point, if you, yeah, because that loop will try to trigger every 10 ticks or whatever. So pretty much what this will do is this will make sure that person stays in that faction. And if they try to join the other faction, it'll automatically kick them out and push them back in. On that point, this does not handle if there's an extreme discrepancy between player count on the sides. So if you have it where you had 5 versus 5 and then all of a sudden 3 people left, you're going to keep it at 5 versus 2 unless you do some other logic to do that. Which again, you're going to have that on an update tick to check. Again, I'm not going to go into that here. That's another that's another section for another video. So I understand this has been a really long video. We're going on like over an hour here. So, correction, about 40 minutes here. So right now what I've given you, and the other thing I'll do is in the description, I'll stitch this all together in a very nice, probably at this zoom picture. I'll stitch it all together. That way you have something that you can take a look at and reference while you're making this. But what this will do so far, well, once somebody connects, it'll automatically force them to a faction, and then this update tick here will make sure they stay in that faction. Again, actually, you know what? I am going to throw that script in here because, you know, good examples. So repeat after delay. So for integer number 32 of pass, we're just going to say every 10 passes, do it. And we're just going to move this from here to here. And keep that with that. Yeah, so like I said, so the method update takes the pretty much just checks, make sure, hey, is this person, you know, in the right, is he in the faction we set him to? And then up here, this will set the faction. The other thing I'm going to do really quickly here, and this is going to get really interesting, is I'm going to try to integrate this in. That way you can see how it would go. So this right here would go up here, and then this would come down and go back to here. Whoops, crap. So again, unfortunately, this, like I said, this stuff gets really messy the more complex it gets. So we'll put this about here. And then for this is we'll just I like to try to have my logic lines, which are the white ones, as unobstructed as possible within reason. Obviously within, like I said, within reason. It's going to get convoluted eventually. Okay, so I understand this is extremely confusing to look at. However, it will do its job. One thing I am going to do is I'm going to drag this down here. No, I'm not. Up here? No. Anyways. So yeah, so this is our extremely large and convoluted and annoying way of checking to see, or forcing someone's faction on join and then making sure they stay in that faction. Hester, I hope this answers your question. Like I said again, I'll make sure I put up a picture with this with the video. That way you can look through all the nodes and see. This is actually, I would say this is one of the more complex things to do. For simple usage of get online player list is you can just utilize count, and then like what we're doing here with the loop is the @ so the index and the instance. Thank you all for watching this. If you have your own questions, please either go to the Space Engineers Visual Scripting Tool tutorial thread, which I'll leave a link down below in the description, or you can also ask in the comments, and I'll do my best to try to answer them with different videos or point you to the correct video that shows you how to do what you're asking. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys all in the next video.